Tonight on Town Meeting. Rock lyrics, artistic expression, or pornography in disguise. Our special guests include rock legend Frank Zappa and founding member of the Parents Music Resource Center, Sally Nevius. Ladies and gentlemen, the host of Town Meeting, Ken Schramm.
All right. Oh. Thanks. All right. Welcome to Town Meeting. You know, throughout its relatively short history, rock and roll has been the music of generations in transition and in rebellion. It is meant to be, for the most part, the beat of a different drum. But there are those who wonder, has it gone too far? Well, there is a growing number of people who at least think it has gone far enough, with lyrics considered too explicit and music videos thought to be truly offensive. Lawrence Welk, it is not, all right? Keep that in mind as you stay with us this evening. Now, the group spearheading the drive for labeling rock albums is the Washington, D.C.-based Parents Music Resource Center, or PMRC. Now, joining us now via satellite from the nation's capital, please join me in welcoming a founding member of the PMRC, Sally Nevius. Sally, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you hear us? Are we connecting here? Sally?
Okay.
Can you hear us, Sally?
Just barely.
Should I talk louder or should we turn up your...
Can't hear.
Well, let me ask you if you can barely hear us. The PMRC was founded in May of 1985, just 5 or 6 months ago. Was there, I mean, why now? Why in the year 1985 have we found people like yourself so concerned with what you find in rock music?
Jack, be quiet.
We are having what we commonly refer to in the trade as technical difficulties. Sally, can you hear us at all? I'll tell you what, let's put this on hold. We will get back to Sally Nevius. At this point, we will introduce her counterpart for this evening, our second up-front guest, rock legend Frank Zappa. We'll get Frank out here and have him join us. The technological gods are not with us this evening, it would seem. Let's start off with you. Why did Frank Zappa, to coin a pun used in a Los Angeles paper, why did Mr. Zappa go to Washington?
I didn't see anybody else that was willing to take a hard line against these women.
Well, what is it with you? Why did you single yourself out as the most visible opponent to what the PMRC is after?
Well, I expected at the time that I started talking about it that there would be other people who would come forward and say this is really stupid, but they didn't.
Are you disappointed in the fact that you're kind of out there all by your lonesome for the most part?
Doesn't make any difference. I would have done it with or without somebody else's assistance, but I didn't get any help from the Musicians Union or from the RIAA.
Are you comfortable with the role that has kind of been assigned to you in the advent of your introduction to the issue?
I would rather be in the studio. I think that's, I mean, this isn't fun, but it has to be done.
Okay. For those who may somehow be unfamiliar with what the Parents Music Resource Center is interested in doing, since Sally Nevius is unable to talk with us at the moment, basically what they're interested in is rating record albums. They feel that the lyrics are too suggestive, too explicit. They contain profanity, references to the occult, to Satanism. They're concerned with sadomasochistic references and sexual deviations, bisexuality, and homosexuality. Satellite is okay. All right. Let's, at this point, then, reintroduce Sally Nevius. Sally, are you with us?
Hi, Ken.
Hi.
I'm not with you. I wish I were.
Well, I'm glad at least at this point that you're with us via satellite at any rate. Let me ask you, we've introduced Frank Zappa and we've kind of introduced the issue that we're going to be discussing here. From your perspective, can you tell us why 1985 seems to have been the banner year for some kind of mobilized force to tackle what is perceived, generally at least by your folk, problems within the music industry?
Ken, I would say this, that I think there have been so many groups, so many organizations that have really had a groundswell long before we came along. And we just seem to hit right at the right moment. It's as though parents were waiting for somebody to take a very rapid stand. Let me tell you a little bit about us in terms of how we happened to get started. There were 4 of us who are the founders of the PMRC. We have a common bond, and that is children. There are 16 children among the 4 of us. I come at this from a personal viewpoint that has a background of, I'm a school teacher. I spent 14 years teaching the 4th grade. I was a college administrator.
Well, were
you
incensed by this? I mean, did you suddenly turn on the radio one day and hear a song that you had never heard before and became outraged by what you had heard? I mean, what was it that provoked a reaction from you as an individual?
Well, I had bought an album, Purple Rain, for my daughter to give for a birthday present. I thought I couldn't see anything wrong with buying this album. It was an album that had been given a Grammy Award. It had sold over 10.5 million copies, and I assumed that, and other little girls were listening to this, and I thought there was nothing wrong with it. I found out, much to my surprise, that it had on it a song called Darling Nikki, and you may be familiar with those words.
Well, we're going to be getting into some of the lyrics in a moment. Let's, before we go any further, let's kind of generally poll our audience here. How many people here are opposed to any kind of a rating system on record albums? Applaud. All right. Now, how many among us feel that what the PMRC is after is indeed worthwhile and should be carried through? All right. What is it that the PMRC is interested in doing that captures your attention?
Making people more aware of what's on the album. I think parents don't have a chance in the world unless they actually hear the album, and why would you want to go out and buy the album just to hear the words on it, what's being said on the album?
You have no qualms at all with what the goals of the PMRC are?
No.
All right. You applauded as being opposed to what the PMRC is looking for. What's your position? Why do you care whether or not albums are rated?
I feel it's just a waste of the taxpayers' money for the Senate to have investigated this. As far as the ratings, if a child were to buy an album, probably 10 or 11 years old, and to bring it home, why doesn't the parent just say, why is it you listen to this?
All right, but wait a minute. Here's a little kid, as you say, 10 or 11 years old, takes their hard-earned $9 or $10 and goes out and buys an album and is sitting in his or her room listening to it, and mom comes in and hears something about masturbation or sadomasochistic sex or references to the devil. And the parent's going to say, take your $9 and throw the album away.
Yeah, but most of those things are used in nuances or metaphors for things. I think you're putting big names on things that you're making too big of a deal of it, or they are making too big of a deal of it.
Okay, Frank, real quick. Can a youngster discern the...
Well, if you're talking about very young children...
10 or 11 years old.
10 or 11 years old, I think they've also talked about 8 or 9-year-olds, but
okay.
Generally they don't have the $8 or $9 in their pocket. Mommy does. And young teenagers will go to a store unescorted, but little kids usually don't. So mommy can always say, let's get a Smurf record, or let's buy a book, or let's get some music that has no words at all. Parents can do that.
Okay. Sally Nevius, Frank Zappa, stay with us. We'll be right back. When we come back, you're going to hear some of the excerpts from some of these albums that we're talking about and that are at the heart of the controversy. Stay with us. The break you folks get is that you don't have to watch the commercials. Welcome back to Town Meeting. Again, our special guest, go ahead. Hey, we'll never stop applause. Special guests again are Frank Zappa and Sally Nevius, and we're talking about X-rated rock and roll. A few moments ago, Sally Nevius made mention of this album, Purple Rain, by Prince. It sold 9 million copies. Well, let's just take a listen to some of the what the PMRC finds as objectionable material on this album. Okay, we've got a problem with that as well. It's a song titled Darling Nikki. And if you'll permit me, this is on the radio. As she said, we have it up now. All right, we will take a listen to it. Darling Nikki. Frank, you find anything objectionable to that?
No, masturbation is practiced by infants as well as people near death.
All right.
If it's not illegal to do it, why should it be illegal for Prince to sing about it? What's the deal with masturbation? Give me a break.
In a hotel lobby with a magazine, all these people do it.
Were you forced to watch it? It's a song about a situation.
Sally Nevius.
I would say that Prince seems to think that she was a sex fiend, and this is masturbating in a lobby with a magazine. I would like to mention that there's another song that Prince sings.
Well, let's
let's
deal with this one first. Let's stay with Darling Nikki. What is it? Is it the reference to masturbation in a hotel lobby with a magazine?
I think this is inappropriate material for young children to be listening to. And we're talking about young children. We're not talking about adults. We're talking about children that are in a formative stage of their life, their characters in the process of being formed, their values. And for them to hear about masturbating with a lobby in a hotel lobby, I just think that's inappropriate. And if parents think that's okay, then all we're saying is to let parents know that this is available. None of us knew that this was on the album.
Okay.
If this song made allusions to masturbation, there have been songs in rock and roll. Chuck Berry's done them. Everybody's done them to masturbation, but they don't say masturbation. Would that bring the same response in you if the word masturbation had not been used?
Did you
I'm
understand?
sorry.
The question was asked that if there was not a specific reference to masturbation, if it was more or less alluded to, would you still have an objection?
I don't think that's a fair question. I'd have to hear the lyrics specifically. I wouldn't want to pass judgment on that.
Are you?
You know, one of the things that
Hold on, Sally. We got a question for Frank.
Actually, this was for Sally.
Well, then we got a question for you.
Sally, what I was interested in, is your group merely trying to put a label on the album, or do you want in some way to restrict the age limit that a child could go in and buy one of these albums once it was labeled?
No, we're not trying to restrict anyone in terms of buying, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult. We're simply asking that a label that would indicate to the parents that these were explicit lyrics that were available on the album, and they should know this. And then they make their own decision.
Frank, what is your objection to that?
This is truth in packaging.
In the context that she's just given us, that does not seem all that unreasonable.
It is unreasonable. First of all, if you want total assurance, you have to realize somebody's going to have to make the decision as to what that rating is. And the decision rests with the parents, not with a record company executive, not with a governmental committee, not with some industry board. It should be made by the parent. And the way that the parent should make the decision is by reading the lyrics for his or herself.
Okay, so you would advocate putting the lyrics on the back of the album?
Yeah, I would, and also I want to point out that the PTA asked for this over a year ago, and the record companies did not oblige, and it's only been since the PMRC came on the scene that it's been talked about, but the problem is nobody wants to pay for it.
Yeah, I think back in 1956 they didn't want Elvis Presley to shake and move around, and I think a lot of things are more just kind of like a joke, and if the parents could clear that up for their kids instead of making it a big negative trip, it would change the whole aspect of it.
Ken?
Go ahead, Sal.
I would just like to say that we think there's been a quantum leap between Elvis Presley's I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, to Prince singing, if you got no place to go, take you to the movie show, I'll sit you in the back and jack you off.
I know, but if you look at it, a kid, if he sees an X-rated label, he's going to go there and buy it. 'Cause, I mean, it looks like, hey, I haven't seen this before, I'm going to go do it. And look at the record and listen to it. Because it's got that label on it.
She's saying ratings are going to make it a hot seller album.
Well, You know, be that as it may, I don't think we can decide what's going to happen about that. I think the important thing is it gives a tool to parents. I would say most children probably do go in and buy their own albums, but at least when they bring them into the home, parents have a right of censorship within their own home with what their children listen to, what they look at on television, and we just want to give them a tool. That's
All right,
the
so
important thing.
Now you just raised the issue of censorship, be it assigned to the parent as an individual or collectively to the PMRC, which is Frank Zappa's position, right?
My position is this, that if somebody makes the decision for the parent, that is censorship. The parent has the right to raise the child in the way the parent wants to raise the child. And the parent should have the best information about the record possible. In other words, if the moral standards or the local standards of the guy in Hollywood who's a record company executive who says this gets a rating is not the same as yours, then you lose. But the only way you're going to really be able to do it is to read the lyrics yourself. You decide, okay? And it should be left up to you. Nobody wants to pay for it. The rights to those lyrics belong to the publishers and to the people who write the songs. It's not expensive, but nobody is addressing the problem of paying to put the lyrics on there. You could have it all and leave the First Amendment intact if the PMRC would find a way to pay for it. The record company shouldn't pay, the artist shouldn't pay, the songwriter shouldn't pay, and the publisher shouldn't pay. You ask for it, figure a way to pay for it, and you'll have the best of both worlds.
The Parents Association, I was wondering what exactly is the type of labeling, what is exactly the type of labeling that you want to put on the records? Is it a rating system, or is it say sexually explicit, or?
Are we going to give it an X, R, PG, PG-13,
Yes, we ask for a variety of ratings, but because there seemed to be a problem with the industry, we agreed that one generic label would be acceptable to us, and we want to leave that up to the industry. We are not going to impose our values. We're not even suggesting that we be on the panel. We're saying that the record industry appoint their own panel. They can come up with a policy decision, define what blatant explicit lyrics really mean, and then it would leave it up to each individual record company, and they were the ones to make the decision as to which of the records this would be applied to.
All right, sexually explicit lyrics are not the only concerns of the Parents Music Resource Center. It's also albums like Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil. And we'll be talking about this when we'll talk about the effect, focus on the effects, what, if there are any, that rock lyrics have on their listeners. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back to Town Meeting. Again, our special guest, Frank Zappa, Nevius. When we left, we were making reference to this Motley Crue album. Let's just go ahead and listen, and we are going to provide the lyrics for you as well. Listen to this and see what your feelings are. Go ahead. Okay, Frank, you're a father. Would you have your young children listening to that album? Or
Well,
that cut?
I wouldn't go out and buy it for them, but if they bought it for themselves and they thought that it was entertaining, I'd say sure.
You totally wipe out any possibility that this is going to have some influence on a child's life or how he views life, he or she views life, and how he pictures other people and social adaptation.
I don't think that hearing any form of music turns a person into a social liability.
But don't you think there is an influence? Music as an influence. Does it exist?
Well, let's just say that more people died because of Wagner than Motley Crue or anybody else.
But as an influence. You do music because you feel you influence people to some respect.
I've never said that, and that is not why I do music. I do music because I like doing music. It's something I know how to do, just like some people can repair cars. That's my occupation.
So you disregard that?
I disregard it.
Sally Nevius.
You know, I think I think the music industry has a responsibility, and this includes the rock stars. I think they have shown responsibility in so many of the things that they have done. We're not criticizing all of their work. I think they're creative, and I respect their right to say what they want, but I also know that they have a tremendous influence on the young people today. We know they listen to between 4 and 6 hours of rock music a day. That adds up to 10,460 hours, and there are only 11,000 hours in the classroom between the 1st and the 12th grade. We know that suicide rates are up 300% in the last 10 years, and yet you have 3 of the leading rock stars, or at least 3 of the rock stars, who seem to promote suicide in their records.
Is it really fair of you to attribute what statistics you've used to a record album? You feel that there is that much influence and exerted?
Could I say something about the suicide? I think that maybe suicide is on the increase, but I think that the reason for the increase is more kids today feel like they have less of a chance because of the behavior of the adults in the society, and that will make you kill yourself.
I was going to ask Sally if she didn't feel that kids today had strong enough minds that they couldn't stand up to things they heard. They don't have to take everything they hear seriously on a record. Don't you think that they can think enough for themselves?
I think that's true, but what we are talking about are young children who are in a stage where they're forming their values and their character. We have a psychiatrist in Washington, Dr. Sidney Shankman, who's executive director of Second Genesis. And Dr. Shankman says that young people, when they're in the formative stage of life, where their characters are in the process of being developed and their values, they look up to rock stars as role models, and they take their messages as a mandate for action. One of the rock's own
Well, hold on.
people...
Frank, can we get you to react to that?
About a rented psychiatrist?
Well, or about his findings?
I don't find the same thing. First of all, I've been on the road for 20 years. I talk with kids who consume all different kinds of music. If I come to a town, often I will go to a club where some other kind of music is being played. I don't find people adversely affected by music. I don't see that that all the noise that has been made over this issue is really worthwhile. First of all, by Tipper Gore's own count, what you told me when I had drinks with her and her husband in Washington, the PMRC has received 10,000 letters. That's not the tail wagging the dog. That is the flea trying to wag the tail which wishes it could wag the dog. If you're basing this whole thing on 10,000 letters, you know, I think that is an enormous waste of time and money.
Getting into some of the meatier issues, though, this is the AC/DC album we were making reference to before. And everyone has heard, I'm sure, the Ramirez case down in Southern California, the Night Stalker.
That's because television keeps pumping it up.
Okay, television pumps it up. But the fact remains that this has been, at least, there's some indication that this did have an inordinate influence in the life of a man who's now been
was
charged.
wearing a Jack Daniels T-shirt. Don't you think that that could have had some influence on his attitude also?
Jack Daniels is restricted to people who are over 18 or 21 years of age, depending on what state you're in.
How old is he?
Well, but now listen. Here's an excerpt.
Mm-hmm.
This is an excerpt from one of the songs. I am your night prowler. I sleep in the day. I am your night prowler. Get out of my way. Too scared to turn on the light because there is something on your mind. Was that a noise outside the window? Watch the shadow on the blind. And you lie there naked like a body in a tomb, suspended animation as I slip into your room.
What are you telling me?
What I'm asking you is, someone who may have other problems unrelated to this, does this act as some kind of a catalyst? And how do we know about those people?
I can't make that determination. However, the things that I have read about this in the Los Angeles Times, where a lot of this stuff did occur, the headlines are real big and they're real scary, and it makes a direct connection. And it looks like that in the big print, but when you read it, even the police say there's not a connection. That's why I object to having the same thing replayed every time I do one of these shows, because I think that the amount of coverage that this has gotten may be enough to give this man a mistrial.
Haven't we all had dreams where we feel that something's stalking us or something? Couldn't that be part of it? You know, we've all had dreams where we're really scared. That song couldn't just be about maybe somebody coming in and killing you, or somebody, you know, who's really into
man or something.
sadomasochism or death or something.
One other point about the Ramirez case is that he came from he had a terrible childhood, And I'd like to know how many times has this guy watched the A-Team or seen Rambo? And did those things perhaps influence him?
Okay, Sally, Nevius, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I'm certain that's true. One of the things that I would like to say to Frank is there's a quote that he made, an international musician, which says, quote, basically what we are talking about is the willingness of people to adopt behavioral patterns that are specified for them from some outside source. Somebody tells you, be a hippie, be a punk, and you're dumb enough to do it.
Yeah, I have said that. And do you know who I'm talking about saying it? I'm talking about the media telling it. That's not me saying it. You better look at the quote closer.
The messages that some of these young people are getting, they're taking them literally. They don't take them as a cartoon, as some of you think that they are. And that's our concern.
Well, if they're taking them literally, it's because of the failure of the schools to give people an education.
I want to say something about the AC/DC lyrics. I mean, this is something straight out of a Stephen King novel. I mean, these kids are going to Fright Night and all this kind of stuff, and, you know, they're staying up till after midnight till mom and dad go to bed so they can turn on the Cinemax and watch people, you know, have sex on TV. I mean, come on, you know, where are we going to start and where are we going to stop this? And who's going to pick the people they're going to pick what the kids listen to? It's a problem having the panel in the first place, but who's going to pick the panel to judge the stuff, you know, when it all comes to an end, you know? It's crazy.
I think that's up to the industry. Ken, may I say something?
Go ahead, quickly.
There's an album that's called Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and on the back of it, this is what it says: manipulation of children's minds in the field of religion or politics would touch off a parental storm and a rash of congressional investigations. But in the world of commerce, children are fair game and legitimate prey.
I play for a rock band called Sleaze, and I mean there's enough controversy on our name more or less than our songs. You know, we've just signed with a local record company. I don't feel there's anything objectionable about any of our songs, but I don't feel anyone else has the right to rate our songs. I mean, I'm the only one that has the right to rate, you know, my album. You don't have it.
Sally, why music? Why not tackle books? Why not rate books instead of music albums?
That hasn't been a concern of ours. Maybe that's somebody
But why
else's
isn't it a concern? I guess that's what I'm asking. Why isn't it? What generated the concern with the music as opposed to concern with the
because of
books?
our young children. Our young children were listening to these records, and we didn't know what they were listening to. And what we were saying to parents is, tune in, don't tune out. We weren't tuned in. We didn't know what they were listening to. It's important that you know, but then we found out that there was no way we could know unless we listened to the whole album. Now, parents are not going to take the time to do that. I think rock and roll is for kids, and let them enjoy it. But I see no reason for them to get some of these messages that are being sent out. There's lots of good rock and roll that's out there, and I just want to know where it is.
I see no problem with books for the simple fact that you don't find an 8 or 9-year-old going around buying Playboys. They can't even buy a Playboy. My 8-year-old can go in the store, get a tape, come home, and I'm shocked to death about what he's playing. I have bought things for him. I don't consider myself real conservative. Look at me. Do I look like a real conservative parent? Okay. I mean, what is the problem with one little label to say this has explicit material?
No, that isn't necessarily what the PMRC is looking for. If lyrics were on the back of the album, you would be content with that. All right. Or with perhaps a warning. But what about if the record label is labeled, is given a status of X or R or PG?
That's not what we're asking
Movies
for,
are
though.
given statuses of that. And we determine what we go see. What is the problem with an album having that same status?
Okay.
There's a big problem with that.
We're going to take a quick... Go ahead, Frank.
The problem is that if you rate a motion picture, the actors in the motion picture are hired hands. They're in the movie to pretend. Whatever the film is rated, it doesn't hurt them as individuals. If a guy is singing on the album and he wrote the music and the album gets some stigma of filth, it goes to the personality and the actual life of the person who's singing the record, and it's not the same way.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, hold on, Sally, we've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take some calls from those people out in the viewing audience. All right, town meeting. Let's get right into some phone calls. Go ahead, you're on town meeting.
I'd like to say, first off, to Mr. Zappa that he is one of my all-time favorites. But I guess kind of what we're talking about here is, first off, I program a lot of radio stations and a lot of music. What we do is we give certified tests to people that we screen. First off, what we do is we play little hooks for them to rate. The better the rate, the more they play. The more they play, the more listeners they get. The more listeners they get, the more advertising, and so on. My question is, a lot of this is being pointed towards the way kids are using their minds, the way they listen to these songs, and a lot about these mass murderers that do the same. I'm not going to get into graphic detail or graphic lyrics like you have already tonight. What I'm going to do is give you a couple of country western titles because I feel rock and roll really has taken a lot of the brunt. Let's go to, like, let's say Larry Gatlin's song, Lady Go Down on My Love. How about Mickey Gilly's song?
All right, hold on. Hold on, you've raised a good point. Sally Nevius, why are we targeting just rock and roll?
Because we find that this music seems to be targeted to the young people, and that's why. We know there are lyrics in country music that would be offensive, but
So
this music seems to be targeted to the young people today.
Frank, you think that's fair, or do you think?
No, I think that the answer lies in the fact that Senator and Mrs. Gore are from the state of Tennessee, and so is Nashville.
Right on.
All right, let's get back to the caller. Do you think... Let's get back to the caller. You're kind of, let's just lay it right out on the line. Are you in favor of what Sally Nevius is after and would encompass that to mean country western music as well?
Well, I got to tell you, Darling Nikki is rather graphic. We have played that. It did get very well in the ratings. It does get played quite a bit on a lot of the urban stuff. I am more or less opposed, and I want you to know right now that I am real open to music. I take in quite a bit. It's not just little stuff. It's all kinds. And for you to just hit on rock and roll and give them the big brunt of it just because AC/DC and Motley Crue play real hard stuff, it just ain't fair. There's all kinds of stuff, like the movies that they used to listen to in the 50s when Marilyn Monroe and Montgomery Ward would sing, "Everybody does it, we do it."
All right, hold on. There's lots of historical perspective that we could place on this. I recognize that. But let's get on with this. Thank you very much.
Ken, I think what we're doing here is we're missing the point. I think what's being said is that rock music is making a lot of money. I heard Mr. Zappa say that what we need to do as parents is we need to start putting our money where our mouth is, and I think it's the other way around. I think the rock music industry has been making a lot of money through our kids. They've been selling a lot of T-shirts. They've been selling a lot of stuff, and it just seems to me that what we're saying here is what Sally Nevius is saying is that this is the tip of the iceberg. Kids, rock promoters, get your act cleaned up, because we're the ones that are going to be voting, and we're the ones that are going to have a say in this matter.
No, I think it's the other way around. I think that this matter concerns everybody who is 18 and up, because, you know, you can vote too. Even if you're not a registered voter, you can still write to the people in the government. You have a right to tell them what you think. You can send the mail straight to Senator Gore's office. I'm sure he'd like to hear how you feel about it. And I think that really what will happen is, if the government presses this issue, they are going to experience something that will sort of resemble the return of the living dead, because all those kids who weren't interested in voting just might rise up and send a very good message to all of those people in Washington who have been trying to do this.
Go ahead, Sal.
We've made it very clear from the beginning that we are not interested in legislation. And it was made very clear in the hearing by the chairman, who said there's zero chance for legislation. We don't want this. We think it needs to come from the industry. And this is a matter of consciousness raising for parents and for the industry to show that they can have
Sally, let's look at the pragmatic side of this, however, with the record industry looking at some legislation dealing with
the blank tape tax and a number of other things. But also, during the hearing, Senator Hollings said that if he could make all of this music, if he could take it away constitutionally, he would, and he said he was looking for ways to do it. Senator Exon favors legislation. I'm sure there are others on that committee that favor legislation. I tried to ask at the time, before I read my statement in that hearing, because I had heard what she just said from Senator Danforth, because I talked with him on a CBS News right before that. He said no legislation. I come to the hearing and I hear two people before I make my testimony start talking like they really want it. So I don't know who's really telling the truth or who has the power here.
Well, all I can speak for is the PMRC, and we have said all along we're not interested in legislation.
Okay.
I think people would prefer to solve this problem without legislation if possible, but the principle here is that's what being overlooked is that the adult community, and particularly parents, do have a right. They have an absolute right, according to the United States Supreme Court since 1968, which said as much in a decision called Ginsburg versus New York, that adults have a right to set standards for young people. If a parent wants to provide his child with liquor, cigarettes, or whatever it may be, that is a separate issue. But if you're talking about the right of parents to have primary control over the influences their children are subjected to, they have a right, as the court says so, to expect the support of laws, if necessary, to enforce that.
You wouldn't argue with that.
No, I think parents do have the right. The problem is that most parents are so lazy that they're avoiding the responsibility of doing it. Why would you rather have governmentally sanitized heavy metal music than the opportunity to read the lyrics for yourself, make your own decision, and use your own standards in your own home? That, I think, is something that is better. Even Senator Hollings, who wishes he could do away with this material constitutionally, said during the hearing, although it wasn't broadcast in the news, that he preferred my suggestion to the rating system because it makes it absolutely a determination to be made by the parent. You look at the lyrics, you decide for yourself. Now, what seems to be suggested here is that it's a lot cheaper to put a sticker on the front of the album than it is to deal with the rights of the people who write music for a living.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Sally here.
Ken?
Hold on, Sally. We have a question for you.
Well, this isn't a question. It's more of a comment. I just like to say, go back to when you're talking about molding a child's future about this with his music. Now, my father, he's a fan of Frank Zappa's, and he listens to rock music. He called it heavy metal. And I was always around it since I was younger, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old and up. And I've grown up fine. I'm ASB president of my high school, Redmond High School, which has 1,700 students. I'm a 3.8 student. I get really good grades. Respected in the community, I suppose. But I don't really feel that rock has really, drastically changed my life. I mean, I really enjoy Bruce Springsteen's music, and Bruce Springsteen's album has a song on it about child molestation. This doesn't mean I'm going to go out and molest a child. And one more thing I'd like to say is this is sort of almost communistic. You say, the movies are rated already, books are rated. Next year, music will be rated. Then you're going to say what we can wear, what we can't wear, what we can say, what we can't say, and what we can do. It's just totally ludicrous.
Sally, I think he's tapped in.
I think that's an unfair statement.
But he's tapped into the fear. If it's unfair or not, he has tapped into the fear of what lay in the future should you succeed in arbitrarily putting some kind of standards on music today.
Look, this is simply truth in packaging. That's all. We're not saying that the artists should not write this. We're not saying that we're trying to restrain their creative talents. We're simply saying let parents know what's available out there and let them make the judgment.
Well,
there
Frank,
are laws in this land.
Frank says that's fine. Go ahead and put the lyrics on the album, and that's fine, and parents can read what's in there. You don't need a rating.
Well, what I don't understand is that Frank puts labels on his own albums. In fact, he goes so far he puts a label on his invitation. Frank, I'm sorry we didn't make your party in New York last week.
No, I wish you could have. You would have loved it. No, but my label says something different.
Hold on. It just so happens that we have right here. Now, this is on an album put out by Frank. It's called Thingfish. It's about AIDS, correct?
Yeah.
All right. The album, I won't read all of it.
Please do, because it's very important that
read
you
all
do.
of it?
Yes.
All right. The album contains material which a truly free society would neither fear nor suppress. In some socially retarded areas, religious fanatics and ultra-conservative political organizations violate your First Amendment rights by attempting to censor rock and roll albums. We feel this is unconstitutional and un-American. As an alternative to these government-supported programs designed to keep you docile and ignorant, need I go on?
Yes, you have to. Because if you
Barking
don't, I will.
Pumpkin is pleased to provide stimulating digital audio entertainment for those who have outgrown the ordinary.
Ken, if I could say, I don't think Frank and the PMRC are too far apart. He supports us in terms of having lyrics available, and he also supports a label. I guess where we differ is what would go on the label.
Okay, because he wraps
Finish
it
the
up.
label, finish the label.
He wraps it up by saying the language and concepts contained herein are guaranteed not to cause eternal torment in the place where the guy with the horns and pointed stick conducts his business. This guarantee is as real as the threats of the video fundamentalists who use attacks on rock music in their attempt to transform America into a nation of check-mailing nincompoops in the name of Jesus Christ. If there is a hell, its fires wait for them, not us. Now, that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit and kind of chortle at that, but
it's harsh.
It is harsh. Why?
Why?
And this came out before this whole PMRC organization was formed,
That's
I might
right.
add.
Yes, but I started doing this last year because I started smelling the vapors of this, you know, a little ways off. Here's the difference in me putting this sticker on my album. I own the record company. I wrote the music. I performed the music. I own the publishing. I wrote the lyrics. I take full responsibility for the content of that package, and there's my sticker.
But
and the
Sally
words are
Nevius
inside.
is correct in that, in some respects, that is what they're looking to accomplish as well.
Well,
That's all we're asking
but
for.
wait, if that's all you're asking for, then you've already got it, because even some Prince albums have a warning on them. You
Okay.
see? And see, voluntarily, a lot of people have already put warnings on, including Marvin Gaye and a lot of other people who are doing different kinds of music. The warnings are there. What I object to is having somebody enforce it, so it has to be all the way across the board.
Okay,
and
with
somebody
that,
making the decision.
quick break. When we come back, we will find out what lies ahead in the battle over so-called pornography rock. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back to town meeting. Go ahead. You had a quick question.
Yeah, I was going to direct this both to Sally and Mr. Zappa, is if word's going to be put on the album and the parents would realize that they're safe, what about radio? I mean, if a song is going to be a hit, they're going to play it on the radio, and then are they going to say, excuse me, this song has some dirty words, you can't listen to it, so leave the room.
That's another issue altogether. I think that what you ought to concentrate on is just a matter of the lyrics on the record, because that's the basic problem. The mechanics of dealing with radio is a really complicated other discussion.
Sally, who is supposed to determine?
I would like to say that I'm impressed with what the broadcasters have done. We spoke a couple of weeks ago at the National Association of Broadcasters Convention, and they are showing responsibility. The president, Eddie Fritz, wrote to over 800 stations and asked them to show restraint. And there are radio stations that we know of who have actually made the decision not to play what they would consider
But
offensive.
Sally, is that
they
the
made
kind
their
of
decision?
Sally, is that the kind of society that we really want, with people making what might be capricious decisions in someone else's point of view as to what we should and should not hear? At various points in our society, we have had various standards, and it just seems that water seeks its own level, and there is an equalizing factor that comes to bear here that you tend to ignore.
Ken, you've got two children. You've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. Halloween's coming up. How would you like for them to hear the lyrics to this song, which is by the dead Kennedys, I Kill Children? I kill children, love to see them bleed. Give them poison candy to spoil their Halloween. Crush them under my car. I love to hear them scream.
Okay, the fact whether or not I would have my children listen to that, to be real honest with you, is superfluous. My point of view doesn't really amount, it is not germane to what we're trying to discuss here right now, shall we say. I'm still trying to get at one of the other questions that someone raised, and that is who is going to be determining what deserves what rating? You propose what?
We have said the industry. We're not suggesting
Who among the
panel.
industry?
The Recording Industry Association of America. We've asked that they appoint a panel that would consist of artists, producers, people within their own company, and they in turn would come up with a description of what would be blatant explicit lyrics, arrive at a policy so that at least there would be a guideline for the various individual record companies to go by, and then the record companies make their own decision. It's up to them.
Okay, this is towards Sally. I support kind of what she's doing. I don't think she has a chance in rating the records. I mean, getting them to put a sticker on or getting the record company to do what she wants them to do. I think it's good that she's directing this attention so that maybe the parents will take more of a responsibility towards, getting involved in deciding what their children.
I'm for the
I
parents
think
take.
the problem is, of course, that they have no way of knowing what these lyrics are in the album. They're not available. You have to buy an album, you have to open it up, and then some of the albums have lyrics, but most of them don't have them on the inside.
Sally, I'm for the parents having the responsibility, but I question who's going to have the responsibility to put the lyrics on the album, and will we have access to that? In a second breath, I heard Frank talk about, yes, have the lyrics on the album, but then he said later, and correct me if I'm wrong, that put the money out and you'll get what you want. Who puts the money out?
Who puts the money out? What is the logistical method of going around and getting
Well,
this?
let me tell you some other logistical problems. First of all, if you print the lyrics on the back, there is no guarantee that a district attorney somewhere in Mississippi isn't going to get some votes by busting a store that happens to have an album with full disclosure lyrics on it, and go in and arrest that man for having pornographic material in his record company, in his record store, which is one of the things that the RIAA is concerned about now. And that...
Well, now, wait a minute. If you acknowledge that there are laws that would indeed prohibit publication of the lyrics on the back of the album, how can you then turn around and condone...
No. That's not what I'm acknowledging at all. I'm telling you this is a fact of life, that there are district attorneys in different parts of America who would say this is a real vote-getter and would go out and do that because, there's enough of a gray area there where you can make a stink about it and get some votes, and it's, more politics with a capital P, and you still haven't solved the problem. In reality, the maximum amount of information to the parent is the lyrics themselves. 100% of the lyrics, all visible on a white sheet of paper, shrink-wrapped inside of the back of the jacket so that it's on a separate piece of paper. It doesn't interfere with the album art. When you take the paper out, you still have a complete piece of album art, and you can see it and you can judge for yourself. Now, do you want that, or do you want somebody else to decide in their own community with standards that may be different from yours, what is smut?
Well, this is getting back to the rating. I mean, who's to say what should be rated and what shouldn't be rated? Everybody has things that are objectionable to them. And if we put all of our objections together, there's going to be nothing left. I mean, everything's going to be bad. There's going to be no
That's why
good.
you should be able to decide for yourself.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sally.
People don't seem to have been too discouraged about the movie industry ratings. They don't always agree with them, but at least it's a tool. Parents do use that. And people haven't objected to that. So there's nothing different about this.
You don't see anything different, Frank? Or
I
do you
watched a
see
movie
something?
last night on HBO called Sheena. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, wow.
Isn't that a terrific film? I think it's got
But what's it rated?
PG. A
Okay.
guy gets stabbed in the throat with a spear, and you have nudity in it. And that's a PG. Okay, I think it's really terrific. But I mean, how can you rely on the ratings? It's still somebody's whim. It's what they see, and it's what they think.
I think anything is better than what we have now, which is zero.
I think this can be resolved a lot easier, because people have the rights to listen to whatever they want to listen to, but parents also have the right to know what their kids are going to be listening to. And they shouldn't have to buy the record before they know what they're listening to. And, putting the, labeling it, if the people that are producing it are going to be making the money off of it, then they should be, putting the label on it.
Okay. Sally, a quick question. We're laboring under the assumption here. The record industry statistics indicate that 70% of the record albums are bought by people 20 and over. Does that factor into your consideration in this issue at all?
Sorry, what was that again, Ken?
Record industry statistics indicate that 70% of the record albums are purchased by people who are over 20 years old. Does that factor into how you feel about this issue?
No, we're not. No, we're not talking about 20-year-olds. We're talking about young children.
Okay, Sally, if you would go ahead. We've got just very few minutes left here. Give us a quick assessment of your position.
Well, I would say that, as in the words of Dee Snider's Twisted Sister, who has a song says, "We're not going to take it anymore." I think that's what parents are saying.
Okay, I've got to.
We're not going to take it anymore. That the line has been drawn.
Frank.
I did a talk show on a Dallas radio station a few nights ago. I got a phone call from a man. He said, my wife is from a communist country. She's from Poland. She says, this is just like what started there.
Okay. I want to thank Frank Zappa, Sally Nevius for being with us. Next week on Town Meeting, the most dangerous drug you can take may be something your own doctor gives you, prescription drug abuse. Affects about 400,000 people in King County alone. Hear the painful stories of how nice people get hooked on prescription drugs and find out how to get help before it's too late. Reserve your free Town Meeting tickets. Call 443-4186. Make Town Meeting a regular part of your viewing audience. Thanks for watching. Take care and have a good night.